On a seemingly ordinary Friday morning in a quiet Stalybridge flat, a routine lunch plan was about to collide head-on with an unimaginable hidden world. No one could have predicted that a simple lift would lead to a scene that would forever alter two women's lives and expose a secret operation worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Courtney Larkin, aged 25, and Ellie Morton, just 21, appeared to be like countless other young mothers in Greater Manchester, each navigating the challenging waters of single parenthood. Both were raising their children, and neither had a criminal record, living lives that seemed, from the outside, entirely unremarkable. But beneath the surface, stark differences and personal struggles were silently brewing, setting them on wildly divergent paths that would ultimately converge in a moment of shocking revelation. For Courtney, life had taken a particularly devastating turn. A mother of two, she had tragically lost her children to the care system, a profound personal loss that had left deep scars. In the months leading up to that fateful day, she had been desperately attempting to rebuild, moving in with her father and striving to reconnect with her 9-year-old son. Yet, within the quiet confines of her home, stability remained elusive. A moment of weakness had seen her turn to cocaine, a coping mechanism that quickly spiraled beyond her control. Ellie Morton, with her 2-year-old daughter, had her own set of challenges, though perhaps less dark. She balanced part-time cleaning shifts at a local Hollywood bowl with co-parenting, supported by her parents, an NHS nurse and a firefighter. She had no known history with drugs, no connections to any criminal underworld. Her days were consumed by childcare and work, a life far removed from the clandestine dealings that were about to engulf her. Neither woman, it seemed, fit the typical profile of a high-level drug trafficker. There were no flashy displays of wealth, no overt signs of illicit activities, just two women trying to get by. But for Courtney, the desperation had led her down a path that transitioned from a personal struggle to something far more organized and dangerously profitable. The storm was gathering, and though the raid that would expose everything was still days away, the subtle tremors of what was to come were already present, if only someone had been looking closely enough. What began as a personal struggle for Courtney Larkin quietly evolved into a sophisticated, self-sufficient enterprise. This wasn't a story of coercive gangs or a vast criminal network forcing her hand. According to later court evidence, Courtney herself orchestrated the entire operation. Police would eventually uncover the heart of this hidden structure, a dedicated drug hotline operated solely from her mobile phone. This digital lifeline, meticulously managed, allowed her to coordinate a Class A drug supply across Greater Manchester, a startling revelation that challenged the initial perception of a minor, isolated issue. Between April 8 and May 6, 2022, a span of less than a month, Larkin used this illicit channel to source cocaine from a local dealer, then methodically processed it herself. She would cut the raw product, carefully portion it into individual snap bags, and even personally handled delivery runs using her own vehicle. While the scale of her operation might not have rivaled international cartels, its efficiency was undeniable. Law enforcement would later describe her methods as structured, clean, and remarkably consistent, qualities that made her a significant target in their ongoing efforts to combat street-level drug distribution. Her motivations, deeply rooted in personal trauma and addiction, revealed a tragic descent from battling dependency to actively fueling it in others. She maintained a tight circle, operating from within the seemingly innocuous walls of her Stalybridge flat, where thousands of pounds worth of crack cocaine were being prepared for the streets. The bags were already packed, the arrangements meticulously made, completely unaware that an unseen force was swiftly closing in. The morning of Friday, May 6, 2022, started like any other. Ellie Morton arrived at Courtney's flat just after 11 a.m., expecting a simple lift to lunch, a mundane errand that would lead her directly into a living nightmare. What she encountered inside was a scene far removed from any social gathering. Courtney wasn't dressed to leave, no coat or keys in hand. Instead, she was on the living room floor, meticulously engaged in the precise, methodical process of cutting white powder, weighing it with digital scales, and carefully sealing it into small snap bags. A mirror lay before her, alongside blades and countless empty baggies, a clear indication that she was in the midst of a major operation. The shock must have been profound, a sudden, jarring confrontation with a reality she never knew existed. Yet, Ellie did not immediately turn and flee. According to the prosecution, she questioned if they could still depart, but Courtney, absorbed in her task, insisted she needed to finish first. This critical decision, made in a split second, would irrevocably alter both their futures. Morton, by her own admission, agreed to assist. She sat beside her friend, and for the next hour, in an unsettling silence, they worked together, preparing Class A drugs for distribution. Some bags were already neatly laid out, awaiting collection. But there was another detail, even more significant, lurking just out of sight. In the corner of the room, discreetly placed, lay something else entirely, an item whose true significance would only be fully understood moments later. All the while, neither woman heard or saw the covert team of officers assembling quietly outside, their movements precise and synchronized. The clock was ticking down, and at precisely 12:05 p.m., their world was about to shatter. At the stroke of 12:05 p.m., officers from Greater Manchester Police executed a search warrant at the flat on Stone Cliff Terrace. Their swift, decisive entry into the property confirmed weeks of meticulous intelligence gathering, but even they were taken aback by the scene that unfolded before them. Courtney Larkin and Ellie Morton were found on the living room floor, completely surrounded by the paraphernalia of drug preparation. The atmosphere was eerily quiet. There was no shouting, no desperate scramble to escape, just two women caught entirely off guard, in the very act of their operation. At the heart of their illicit activity was a low, makeshift table. Upon it lay 37 individual wraps of crack cocaine, each already weighed, sealed, and ready for immediate street sale. But the true extent of the operation was revealed in the room's corner. Behind the two women, partially obscured from direct view, sat an ordinary Aldi bag for life. Inside this unassuming shopping bag, officers discovered a staggering 1.185 kilograms of crack cocaine, an entire block, yet to be broken down and packaged. The total street value of the seized drugs was estimated at an astonishing £123,000, clearly signaling an operation far beyond personal use or small-time dealing. Ellie Morton's legal defense later claimed she had no prior knowledge of the substantial quantity hidden in the Aldi bag, asserting she was only aware of the drugs openly visible on the table. For the seasoned officers, the scene was, as they described it, an evidential paradise. Nothing had been concealed. Drugs, equipment, packaging, scales, and both suspects were all in plain view. They were immediately arrested and transported to Ashton-under-Lyne Police Station, while the entire haul of drugs and their mobile phones were seized as critical evidence. Outside, the neighbors remained oblivious to the dramatic events, unaware that a sophisticated £123,000 cocaine operation, run by two single mothers, had been dismantled in less than 60 seconds. At Ashton-under-Lyne Police Station, the two women were processed and subjected to questioning. In a standard police procedure, both remained silent throughout their interviews, offering no explanations, no denials, and no details regarding the events that had unfolded in the flat. It was a firm no-comment response from both, a tactic often employed on legal advice. However, the investigation was far from over. The mobile phones seized during the raid would prove to be pivotal, becoming central to the next, critical stage of the inquiry. Within days, Greater Manchester Police's technical teams had successfully extracted the data from both devices. The contents of Courtney Larkin's phone laid bare the astonishing scale of her involvement. For almost a month, from April 8 to May 6, 2022, she had been operating a dedicated drug line. This was no mere side hustle. Her phone revealed a meticulously structured operation. Texts directly linked her to multiple drug deals, while location data precisely placed her at various handover points across the city. There were extensive conversations with buyers, detailed arrangements for delivery, and undeniable evidence of coordination with others within the illicit network. She was not merely facilitating supply, she was actively managing distribution, an alarming level of organization. The digital evidence also conclusively supported what officers had discovered during the raid. These drugs were clearly not for personal use, but an integral part of a sophisticated, street-level Class A operation. Ellie Morton's phone, however, told a distinctly different story. Forensic analysis revealed no evidence of her prior involvement in drug dealing. There were no communications with buyers, no history of supply, only her undeniable presence at the scene on that fateful day. She had simply arrived for a lift to lunch and, in a critical moment of decision, found herself actively packaging Class A wraps. Yet, at that stage, the law made little distinction between their levels of involvement. Both women were charged with possession with intent to supply, a serious offense. The deeper context of their individual roles and the complex decisions that had led them to that point would only begin to unravel later, during their appearances in court. At Minshall Street Crown Court, the weight of the evidence against Courtney Larkin and Ellie Morton was undeniable and laid out for all to see. The significant block of crack cocaine, the 37 individual snap bags, and the irrefutable digital trail from Larkin's phone all pointed towards their guilt. Faced with such overwhelming proof, both women entered guilty pleas to charges of possession with intent to supply Class A drugs, making a full trial unnecessary. The focus of the courtroom quickly shifted from establishing guilt to understanding the context of their actions and the profound consequences they now faced. The defense presented a harrowing background for Courtney Larkin, delving into the personal trauma of losing her 2 children to the care system. Her solicitor painted a picture of a life riddled with deep-seated trauma, persistent mental health issues, and a spiraling drug dependency, all of which culminated in the elaborate operation that police had so decisively dismantled that Friday afternoon. For Ellie Morton, her legal team emphasized her significantly more limited role. She was portrayed as a naive and easily influenced individual, genuinely shocked by the scene she had walked into. The court heard how her sole intention had been to secure a lift to lunch, and how her decision to remain and assist that day would ultimately cost her far more than she could ever have imagined. What would you have done in her place, faced with a friend caught in such a precarious situation? Beyond these personal accounts, the presiding judge underscored a larger truth. He made it abundantly clear that while both women had undeniably faced personal hardships, the devastating impact of Class A drugs reached far beyond individual trauma. Let's be clear, he stated emphatically, these drugs in particular cause misery. The prosecution further solidified their case, stressing that Larkin was not merely in possession, she had systematically structured and actively managed a street-level supply line. This was not a spontaneous act or a mere favor, it was a calculated, illicit business. Both women sat in silence, their faces reflecting the grim reality as the court confirmed their guilt. The only remaining question, hanging heavily in the air, was the length of their sentences and how their differing levels of involvement would be reflected in the final judgment. The day of sentencing arrived on a Monday, December 12, 2022. Courtney Larkin, as the architect and primary operator of the drug line, received the heavier sentence, 4 years and 11 months in prison. The court acknowledged the profound personal struggles she had endured, but ultimately, these mitigating factors could not overshadow the serious nature of her crime and its wider societal impact. Ellie Morton's sentence, however, told a distinctly different story. The court accepted that she had neither planned nor profited from the cocaine operation. Yet, her decision to remain in the flat and actively assist in packaging the cocaine, even for a limited time, brought her firmly within the reach of serious criminal charges. She was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, but this was suspended for 20 months, meaning she avoided immediate custody. This leniency came with stringent conditions. She was ordered to complete 150 hours of unpaid work, attend 40 rehabilitation activity days, and wear an electronic tag enforcing a strict nightly curfew from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. Both women left the courtroom with their futures irrevocably altered, one facing years behind bars, the other facing months of restrictive conditions and constant supervision. Neither walked away untouched by the consequences of that fateful Friday morning. What are your thoughts on the sentencing in this case? Do you believe the outcomes accurately reflected the individual roles of Courtney Larkin and Ellie Morton? Share your perspective in the comments section below. And if you're compelled by real UK crime stories like this, where seemingly ordinary lives unravel into unexpected events, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's always another case to uncover, another hidden truth waiting to be revealed.